Good evening. I'm Donna Deegan. Coming up on tonight's News on 12, think your mail is slow? The post office is embarking on a new program that will actually slow down your mail. We'll show you how, and you'll see how small 6-inch pumps are working to raise an 800.
She began her Jacksonville broadcasting career as Donna Deegan back in 1988. Her cousin Tommy Hazouri was mayor of Jacksonville at the time, perhaps a sign of what was to come. In the 90s, she and WTLV sports director Dan Hicken married, and in 2002, she became Donna Deegan. The 3-time breast cancer survivor is also a 2-time author, and in 2023 would become the second family member from the Hazouri clan to be elected mayor of Jacksonville, and history was made, as the former TV anchor and reporter became the first female mayor of the city of Jacksonville.
It's July 18th, 2017. I'm Harry Reagan doing an oral history interview for the Jacksonville Broadcasters Association with Donna Deegan. Donna, pleased to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And we've got a lot to talk about. You were born in Jacksonville.
Born and raised, yes, sir.
So let's talk about a lot of the people watching this will know you from, before we go back and talk about your childhood, let's talk about your television, some of the highlights of your TV career at Channel 12.
Well, I was just thrilled to have the opportunity to come home to do what I love to do. You know, I love to say that I was first enamored with television when Deborah Gianolis came and spoke to my senior class at Bishop Kenny. Well, and I like to tell that story because it makes her sound so much older than me. And the truth of it is, she really isn't. It's just that she started as a child, basically. Yeah. And when she came to speak to me, I thought I sized her up, and I said, we're about the same height. I said, I like her spunk. I always envisioned that I would be a newspaper journalist because I love to write. That's always been my thing. I love to write.
School newspaper?
School newspaper. Yeah. Wrote some stuff when they used to have a student section in the Times-Union or the Jacksonville Journal. I have some stuff in there. So all of that really was where I thought it would go. And then when she came to speak to my class, I fell in love with her. And I just thought, man, this woman is amazing. I'd seen her on television, obviously. But she really started to spin my wheels in terms of women in TV. And so really it was at that point that I decided when I went to college I was going to focus on broadcasting as opposed to just straight newspaper journalism.
Well, I was going to ask you how you got interested in broadcasting, and
now you know.
You already answered that question. You went to college at Florida State University.
Went to FSU, go Noles, absolutely. Yeah. My son is there now, which makes me very happy. My daughter went to the Evil Empire, but we don't talk about that much in the family. But yeah, so I went to FSU and was able to get a wonderful internship at what was then called WECA. They call it WTXL now. It's funny how many stations I've been to that have now changed both affiliations and call letters. I hope that doesn't have anything to do with me. But so I started there as an intern in my senior year in college and had a wonderful opportunity because they gave me a chance immediately to anchor the morning cut-ins. It's a very small market in Tallahassee, right? But they also gave me the opportunity to cover the political world because you know, you're really at the seat of government there, right? So I got an opportunity to learn politics, learn how to cover politics, learn how all that crazy world works, and it was just a wonderful experience. And I guess I stayed there for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and then took a job down in Fort Pierce.
So you stayed at that Tallahassee station after you graduated?
Oh yeah, they gave, well that was initially what happened. I started as an intern, and they gave me a job. During my internship, I was hired, and then I stayed there as an employee. I think my first salary was like $9,000 a year or something like that. I can't even remember. It was a big deal. And then when I got bumped up to the morning cut-ins, I think I got like $11K. So I was reeling in the bucks back then. But that's how you started, right? You started wherever you could start and get your foot in the door, and then.
And your next stop was South Florida.
My next stop was South Florida. I went down to Fort Pierce. They gave me the opportunity to be a bureau chief in West Palm Beach. So that meant I was anchoring nightly from a bureau on West Palm Beach news. And while I was there, the station across the street, WPEC, which was the NBC affiliate, offered me the opportunity to anchor the weekend news and report. And so I decided to move over to that station. And stayed there for really a relatively short amount of time, probably about a year maybe a year and a half. It all sort of runs together now, Harry. It's been so many years. But my goal was always to come back to Jacksonville. And at the time, my father was gravely ill. We had actually a kidney transplant between the two of us when I was 18, and he had horrible kidney disease. And that had worked for a few years, and then he'd had a rejection episode because it was also very, very experimental back then, and was really going downhill pretty fast. And I really wanted to get home. As it was, I was traveling home as often as I could. So when I had the chance to come back and work for Channel 12 in Jacksonville to do basically the same job, doing the weekend news, I couldn't wait to come back. So for the last 6 months of his life, my dad got to see me on television, which was wonderful.
That's great.
Because he was just my best buddy in the world and my biggest fan. And he had never really gotten to see me on TV beyond a few tapes that I was able to get him in front of. So it was fun to be able to come home and to be able to spend his last little bit of time on this earth doing what I love to do in front of him. So, and then I guess that lasted, I came back in '88. And anchored the weekend news until '92, at which time I was promoted to the evening broadcast, the 5:30 and 11 p.m. broadcast, and there I stayed for 24 years.
at what later became First Coast News.
Right, what later became First Coast News, right.
And retired from that.
Absolutely, yes.
Or segued into a new career, shall we say.
Yes, really, yeah. I mean, it always rubs me a little bit the wrong way when people say you retired, because I certainly didn't retire, but I certainly did retire from that 24/7. As you know, Harry, when you're in the news business, you are the news business. I mean, you have to be available all the time. It's everything you do. It's your waking, it's your sleeping, and for as much as I truly loved that for many years, it was definitely time to go. And when I went, because I had created these foundations and all this stuff that I wanted to do, and literally had no time for any of it. So it was a great career, and absolutely adored it, and was happy to go when I did.
Must have been a little bit special to be covering your hometown that you grew up in.
Absolutely. I can't even tell you how much.
An advantage, I guess, in most respects.
Well, I knew how to pronounce everything. That was nice, right?
Right.
You know, I knew it was Pecan Park Road. Yep. I knew all the little intricate things that people would come in and say wrong.
Right.
And obviously, when I first came back, my cousin Tommy was the mayor. So there were a lot of really cool things for me. But covering Jacksonville was wonderful, and I was then and am now in love with the city, and always thought it had the most incredible potential that nobody else saw, and it's been fun to sort of watch it incrementally try to reach that potential.
So Tommy, Missouri, any problems with that family issue in terms of your objectivity?
No, they rarely had me cover him, honestly. But the truth is, Tommy and I never agreed on much, and it was like everybody in the Missouri family. We had our blood political baths across the dinner table occasionally. But no, I loved him, and I thought he was a wonderful guy, and still think he's a wonderful human being, and that was just an interesting, fun thing that he was the mayor when I came back. But very, very briefly, it was at the end of his tour as Jacksonville's mayor when I came back to Jacksonville.
But as you say, you could pronounce the names that newcomers sometimes get tripped up on.
Yes.
And probably some just background in your DNA that somebody else coming to town wouldn't have had.
Well, within any family, and you think of when you grow up in a city, you sort of know its bones, right? And I think I had a greater understanding than a lot of people did of the personality of the city. Let's put it that way. So I think maybe if I had a special connection with people that way, it's because people in Jacksonville knew me and I knew them. And I still feel that way. I think so many people come into the city and really misunderstand it, and it's just a great place to live with great people and diverse people for sure. But I think I always understood Jacksonville's sort of inferiority complex because I shared in that growing up, and I always felt like we were sort of the little engine that could, but we didn't quite want to believe that, and I think it gave me a unique perspective.
What kinds of what stories would you think of as you in your broadcasting career that you covered that would be part of your memory in terms of Jacksonville journalism?
Well, it's so many things, small and large. I think in terms of a small story, and this is funny, you're going to laugh at this, that this is one of the ones that sticks in my head. But I remember following a guy, and I still remember his name, a kid, when he was 6 years old, named Michael Hodge, who I followed on his first day to school. And then I remember covering his high school graduation when he left to go to college, and we did this whole expanse of time. And it was just one of those stories as a journalist, not only who's from Jacksonville, but who's sort of grown up with it myself, to be able to follow this kid all the way through from this period to this period, and we sort of tried to marry the two stories together. It was so fun, and it was one of those things that just stuck in my head. One of my favorite stories to do. Certainly the 37 days that I spent in Tallahassee during the 2000 presidential election was a time that I will always remember.
Indeed.
We were anchoring the news that night at 11 o'clock, and then it became 2 o'clock, and then it became 3 o'clock, and they had first called the race, and then they decided not to call the race, and they sent us home, and I went to bed, and 2 hours later I got a phone call, and they said, pack a bag, you're going to Tallahassee, we don't know how this is going to end, thinking I'd be there,
yeah.
maybe a day or two before we got all this ironed out. 37 days later,
wow.
With all these national eyeballs on us and satellite trucks from all over the country and the world, following James Baker and it was at once the most exhilarating and exasperating story that you could cover, because it just was so crazy, right?
And it was a national story, and yet it was also a Florida story.
Absolutely a Florida story, and the kind that we sort of hate to have associated with us, but it was fascinating from all aspects. It was really one of those stories that was tough to know what part to pull out for any given day, because there was just so much. There was the overall court decisions that were happening day by day, the different things that were happening, and then all the hanging chads and the 23,000 ballots that were lost. There's so much to that story that I think still today would be interesting to go back and deep dive into again. But that was, as a reporter, and a political reporter at that, probably a huge highlight.
And that story may have changed the way broadcasters handle political stories. It was such a big story, and
it was,
and it went on, as you say.
It was one of those things. It was like a suspense novel that you didn't know until you turned the last page exactly how it was going to turn out. And I think it changed a lot of things. I think it changed our politics a lot. I think it brought us further into political division and caused more of that us versus them mentality, where, man, you took this from me, and I'm going to take this from you, and that's sort of that whole.
It was more red and blue.
I really think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I really think, but I do think it played a part in shaping our political discourse, and then, as you suggest, probably also the way that we cover things. Yeah.
Well, we can talk more about broadcasting, but let's go ahead and segue, as you did in your life, into another career. How did that happen? And tell us about that.
What do you mean exactly?
Well, when you left broadcasting.
Well, when I left, like I said, for me, there were a lot of things that came together. I think that obviously I had been diagnosed with cancer a few times by then. We had gone through that horrible, terrible, rotten recession. I had started foundations. I had 2 children who were getting ready to graduate from college. And all those things came together for me to make the decision to move on, because I felt that at the time, and I bring up all that because if you remember the scenario of the recession, the way it happened, everybody, including broadcast stations, got rid of half their staff, gave everybody a bunch of pay cuts, and said, got 5 more jobs. So I was already very busy just being the anchor of 2 shows plus reporting. But I found myself in the position that I really felt like I was also the attorney that was keeping us from being sued every night, because my eyeballs had to be on everything. I was the producer, the editor, and it all came down to more time commitment and more stress. And I just remember thinking to myself, the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, right? So I just felt like it was time, given everything that had been meaningful to me in broadcasting and everything that was now meaningful to me in terms of the foundations, to make that split. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, I was that person that was starting to come into the news meetings every day and saying, I don't like this. I don't like the way we're going with this. I don't like the way this is going. How are we taking our clothes off today? That was one of my favorite things, to say. And I didn't want to go down that road. And yet I felt with the whole transition into the 24/7 news cycle that we were more and more going down the road of how can we get that quick hit? How can we get that quick ratings burst? Mm-hmm. And it just, to me, as somebody, remember why I got into this business. I love to write. I'm very curious. I love the idea of being this crusader for whatever truth is out there. And yet more and more, it wasn't really, in my view, it wasn't the fault of the people who were working there, or really even the people who were running the station. It's just the way the industry was going. And
it's important to point out, it was not just Channel 12.
No, it was everybody.
Around the country.
So this wasn't something that I blamed the station for or any of my coworkers. It was simply, this is the way it is, right?
And that was 24/7 and cable and a whole lot of factors, right?
Everything. And so consequently, I had less and less time for this foundation that I had created and this race that I had played a part in creating. And I just thought, gosh, I'm not living out my purpose now. I'm really not.
And the foundation was requiring more and more of a commitment.
Yeah, I mean, we were getting the race certainly was, and the foundation needed more commitment.
So let's talk, just in case someone doesn't know, the foundation is designed to help fight breast cancer.
Yeah, what we do with the Donna Foundation, and just to give you a little background of how all that got started, this was after my second diagnosis. And remember, I had gone through the first time with the whole, I'm going through chemo, I'm losing my hair, I'm telling the story, the whole thing. And I just remember saying to my boss, I just don't want to put people through this again. Nor do I want to put myself through it again in terms of on air. Mm-hmm. I really don't want this to be the news. And I said, what if I decide to write a journal, a blog, that people could connect to so they could learn what was going on with me if they wanted to, but yet we didn't have to talk about it on TV all the time. So that's what I did. I started Donna's Journal. And so what happened was, much to my surprise, it became this incredible discourse back and forth between me and other people that had gone through breast cancer. And the more I heard from these people, the more I was just aghast at how many people were going through what I was going through, only they didn't have a job, or they lost their job during treatment, or they were going through some sort of major financial stress, or their Medicaid was cut off because of some change in financial status or whatever in the middle of their treatment. And I just thought, this is horrendous. Women were telling me they were choosing between putting food on the table for their kids and paying for their medicines. And I said, maybe I can use this megaphone that's attached to my mouth to do something about that. And that's why we started the Donna Foundation. And it was specifically to pay for the critical needs of women while they were going through breast cancer treatment, if they'd lost an income or had some sort of, or were financially unable to meet their obligations. Because it's always been my feeling that stress is a killer, right? So if you're adding stress on top of stress, it's hard to heal from that. So the whole goal was, let's take this stress off and let people focus on trying to get better. And that's why we started the foundation. And then, because I'm a runner and always have been a runner, I thought, what better way to raise money for the foundation than to create this event? And did some research and found out there was no marathon out there for breast cancer. And I got with my doctor at the Mayo Clinic and Jeff Galloway, who's a wonderful running coach, and I said, can we do this? And they both said, yeah, let's do it. And so the race had really become the driver of the foundation, because that was what was really the moneymaker, was bringing in all the people from all over the world to run this race.
26.2 marathon.
That's right. That's right. It's a marathon and a half and a relay and all sorts of things. But the bottom line of it is, because it's so unique, it brings people in from all over the world every year. So for me, now remember what I said when we started. For me, the cool thing as a Jacksonville nerd was, I get to bring all these people to Jacksonville who've never seen Jacksonville. And that was part of the fun for me, right? Was to be able to bring all these people from all over the world to Jacksonville for this common purpose, but then also to raise money for the foundation. And then part of the money went to a very specific research portal at the Mayo Clinic, which unravels the genes that cause breast cancer. So all of that became bigger and more and more and more, and yet I found that I was delegating all of it to other people, which I still do a lot of because I'm not an expert on a lot of these things. But I mean, I'm never going to be the race director. I'm never going to actually be I'm the president of the foundation, but I'm not the numbers girl. I'm not the marketing girl. I call myself the chief eternal optimist because I sort of cast the vision basically. But I wasn't present. And that became more and more of a frustration for me. So I just thought, this is a good stopping point for me to say, this has been a great career. We're getting into some wonderful things with the foundation, and let me go and explore some of those things. Mm-hmm. So I do, the foundation is my passion work. I have my own company that I run outside of I don't take a salary from the foundation, but I have my own company that I run outside of the foundation, where I have a health and wellness business, and I do speaking engagements, and I do various things that make that up. But I spend most of my time with the foundations, where I say the foundations, we've now combined the two, so it's just the Donna Foundation with the race as a component. But it's great. I mean, it is the best decision that I ever made.
And how long has that been going? When did
I left? When did I leave? Or how long has the foundation been going on?
The foundation
Foundation was started in 2003.
Okay.
And then the race was started in 2008.
And you were a runner from high school? Or?
No, I actually started running after my last child was born. And it was time to go back to work, and I couldn't fit into my clothes. And I went, for the first time in my life, I have a dilemma here that I'm going to have to figure out a way to solve. I'm not going to go out and buy a whole new wardrobe. So I decided to go out, and I said, these last few weeks before I go back to work, I'm going to just run a little bit and see if I can get off the rest of this baby weight. Well, I was like Forrest Gump. I started running, and I just never wanted to stop. Distance became just this enormous love for me. And so I didn't care about doing the little short races. I wanted to do the long ones. And so that's why the whole idea of doing a marathon appealed to me. I always say I'm never going to outrace anybody, but I'll outlast a lot of people. So, and frankly, the whole idea of a marathon, Harry, to me is such a great metaphor for going through something like cancer, because you have at least 2 or 3 times in that process where you just literally want to quit and sit in the road and say, I can't push on any further. But if you get through that little wall and you get to the other side of it, you sort of feel invincible. And I think the same thing is true for a lot of people when they get through something like cancer treatment. They feel like, well, gosh, if I can do that, what can bug me ever again?
And the running craze, if we can call it that, I think got started with Frank Shorter. And,
sure, in the 70s.
And
sure.
What's his name? Rogers.
Bill Rogers.
Bill Rogers.
Who's come in for our race a bunch of times, yeah.
And so.
And Joan Benoit Samuelson, who comes in all the time for our race.
And it's kept on going.
Yep. It is. It's not. I would say the boom is not as big as it was back then. I think we went through another mini boom about 10 years ago, and it's sort of leveled out. You've got a lot of the younger kids now who are into stuff like CrossFit and different things like that. But you're starting to see it pick up again with younger people who like the whole idea of that sort of a challenge. So it goes like this. Running goes like this, but it's always sort of a steady thing. I would say for people my age, it's still the big thing. Still the big thing.
And there are at least 2 books we should mention, right?
Yeah, I wrote the first book. That's such a great story. And there's a woman named Lynn Harlan, who is a local book editor. She runs a writing workshop. Crazy lady. I love her to death, but wonderful editor. And she called me one day and she said, I had a dream last night and I couldn't get it out of my head, and damn it, I don't want to do it, but I've been told in this dream I need to tell you this, and so I've had a vision that you need to write this book about your journals, and we'll draw out people that were actually corresponding with you, and we'll have them tell their own stories as part of this book. So your overarching story is the book, and then we'll insert these other people's stories written by various different people, into the book. And I thought, well, that's a brilliant idea. And she said, and we will give 100% of the profits of that to the foundation. So, well, I can't say no to that. So worked with her, and what was just a wonderful experience. Because, like I said, my first love has always been writing, and so she really taught me how to, in news writing, we're taught be as spare as humanly possible, right? Be as succinct as you can be. And when you're writing a book, I mean, I remember sending her in my first chapter and she goes, well, that's a great outline, but how about a little meat on the bones? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so she said, I want you to picture somebody who knows absolutely nothing that you're talking about, and you've got to go back in and you've got to describe it in detail to the point where they can actually feel and see and taste and all that. So it was a wonderful experience, and that was the first book. And then the second book was written in 2009, and that was basically a book that was based on just this huge catharsis that I had after my third diagnosis. I had always been, beyond all that public persona that you would see on TV, I had always been absolutely hideously afraid of the other shoe dropping. I was always looking over my shoulder wondering when I was going to get sick again. And after that third diagnosis, which was hideous because it was a few months before our inaugural marathon, I was going in for my 5-year all clear, ready to argue my way out of any further testing, right, with my doctor. She wasn't in town. I was so confident everything was great that I just said, it's okay, I'll schedule all my tests, we can talk later. And as it turns out, the cancer had returned and was in my left lung. And I was devastated, but I just was dumbfounded that, really, God, I'm a marathoner, you're going to give me cancer in my left lung? What the heck? And I remember walking out of the clinic that day. I grabbed Tim's hand and walked out of the clinic, didn't say a word. We sat in the car for about 10 minutes before I could ever say anything. And the first words that came to my head to say, and I have no idea still where it came from, aside from, the beyond, was, you're going to have to teach me how to live, because I am not going to spend whatever time I have left on this planet in fear. And that's exactly what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking about what's next. I wasn't thinking about the chemo. I wasn't thinking about anything except for, if I have 5 minutes left on this planet, I'm not going to be afraid. And so I started this whole journey to learn how to deprogram my brain from that. And so that whole second book was really about viewing your circumstances through a different lens, but more than just an outlook book, really explaining to people, how did I get there? It first starts with a decision that's not just, hey, gosh, I wish I wasn't so afraid. It starts with a decision, and then you actually, like anything else, you have to actually put steps between you and that fear to figure out, and those things take practice, and they take being habitual about them. And so that's really what that second book was about. It was all about how I sort of got from point A to point B, in hopes of helping other people who were going through other difficult circumstances in life. Perhaps they would have the same. So the first book was called The Good Fight, and the second book was called Through Rose-Colored Glasses, A Marathon from Fear to Love. So, and both of them are like children. I love them both in different ways, but they were great cathartic experiences that I hope helped a person or two along the way.
How about a third book?
Oh, I don't. If I write another book, and I'm certainly not going to count it out, but I would have to be inspired, and I would certainly hope that it wouldn't be about me.
Well, I was going to ask you. So maybe the third book would be. I was going to ask you. You would have an optimistic view about the ultimate fight against cancer. So,
well, I don't even use the word fight. In fact, I'm averse to the word fight, because I think that cancer is really the only disease out there that we divide people into winners and losers. She lost her battle. He lost his battle. Nobody says somebody lost their battle with heart disease. Why is that? And so I think it puts us, almost like our politics, where we divide ourselves into teams: team winner and team loser, team Republican and team Democrat. I mean, and you're entrenched and you're fighting. And I think it's crazy, because I think when people are in a constant state of fight mode, it's really, really hard to simply assess your situation, accept it, and then go on to try to live that next day to the fullest. And I think that is the key to healing emotionally and spiritually while you're going through the physical healing. And so, and perhaps has to do with the physical healing, because we talked about stress. So our goal with the race, and I'm sad to say I don't think I've been successful with a lot of people, but some people have gotten it, is that when we started the race, we called it the National Marathon to Fight Breast Cancer. And after the first year, we changed it to the National Marathon to Finish Breast Cancer, because I wanted to take the word fight out. And I still encourage women, don't exhaust yourself with this, I've got to fight this, I've got to fight this, I've got to fight this. Look it in the face. Say, okay, here's where I am. I'm going to accept where I am, and then do everything that you can to make peace in your mind, and to live every day when you get up saying, yay, I woke up today and I'm super excited that I'm alive and the sun came up, and what can I do to make this day great? Because at the end of the day, it sounds so cliche, and I wish there was a way to talk about it that didn't sound cliche, but I almost wish that everybody had to go through something that brought them down to their knees, to where their face was against the ground, to where they had to say, you know what, I'm not in control here, and that's okay. I'm going to get up and I'm going to make the best out of this one and only day that I have to live. Because everybody has that, right? And that's all we know. We don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen. And if we all took that attitude of, I'm just going to do whatever I can for everybody I can all day long, what a miraculous life it would be, right? And I got to tell you, Harry, a really different life from what I call my murder and mayhem life, right? Really different life from police blotters and crime scenes. And I think it took a long time for me to turn that dial in my head. But once I did, you know, I got to tell you, I don't watch a whole lot of news anymore. I had pick out the things that I want to read or the things that I want to watch, and not a whole lot of them have to do with death and destruction. They have to do with thinking, but they don't have a lot to do with police blotters.
So that gets us into the discussion of broadcast journalism then and now, I guess. There does seem to be a lot of emphasis on what I sometimes call 911 journalism.
The fuzz in the was. That's what we used to call it, right? Back in the day, the fuzz in the was. Yeah, I think there is, because it's easy, right? It's quick, and it's eye-catching. That's
and
why.
I think
and it's fear-based.
General managers will tell you that that's what the viewer wants. To some extent, they may be right.
Oh, they are right. I mean, but here's what I think, and I'll go back to my new philosophy of life over the last 10 years. Everything that is not fear is love, and vice versa. But it's so much easier. It's why, and I'll take it back to politics again. It's why our political campaigns very often just degrade down to pure fear. How much fear can I incite about the person that's my opponent? How much fear can I, because people react to fear. It's the most visceral reaction that we have. But love is more powerful. And if we can get ourselves to that point, to where we can change that view and really focus on the more positive part, I think we do ourselves a much greater service. Unfortunately, in the news business, because everything's so bang bang, I think we do tend to focus on the fear. It's much easier to poke somebody and make them afraid, and then they're sort of addicted to finding out, well, I better watch to find out if my neighborhood is safe tonight. I better watch to find out, you know, what boogeyman is in the next closet, because these people are telling me, you know, what to watch out for. And it's so interesting today. If you read what most people's perceptions are of crime in our society, the numbers are overwhelming for the numbers of people who truly believe violent crime is worse today than it was back in the 1970s. And the truth is, if you look at the statistics, it's a fraction of what it was in the 1970s. And the reason people think that is because back then we had a newspaper a day, we had an evening broadcast. We were not pounded with the constant be afraid, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Your world's on fire, your world's, you know, going to hell in a handbasket. And that's where we are now. And again, that's the industry. But like anything else, once you start down that road of mutually assured destruction, it's hard to come back from it.
So you might not be terribly optimistic about ending that.
You know, actually, I'll be honest. I don't think I was until this latest political environment. And as negative as many people are about journalists now, I think what we are starting to see, or what we've seen over the past year, has truly been some of the greatest journalism, especially from newspapers, that we have seen in years. And I'm one of probably the few people, and I'll say that I said it. Back when people were saying newspapers were going to die, what I said was newspapers are going to save us, because it's the only place left where we can do long-form, in-depth investigative journalism. And boy, have people done it. And so while the people that don't want to hear it may call it fake news, the truth is it's excellent journalism. And so I actually have greater hope today than I did when I retired from the news business 5 years ago, that we are really at a point where people are going to start to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to subscribe to. This is what I'm going to pay attention to. And perhaps once enough people, and you know this as well as I do, when you look at television ratings, even the stations that are doing well, if you look at all the big stations in Jacksonville now, they still have a fraction of the audience they had 30 years ago. Now, part of that is because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of different choices, but part of it is because we continue to focus on the least common denominator. Whereas over here, if there's a reason 60 Minutes has been appointment television for however many years it's been on the air, because it's good quality stuff. So I think my hope is, the optimistic part of me says, this is what people are going to migrate toward. People are going to start to say, this is what I'm expecting of you. I don't care if you give me, you know, the everything in 5 seconds, but I do want the quality stuff. This is what I'm going to spend my money on subscribing to. And I hope that, as always, when money talks, as it always will, that will be eventually what drives the television market back in the other direction.
You may have occasion from time to time to give career advice to people, young people who might be considering journalism or broadcasting as a career. What would you say to them today?
Run! First of all, I would ask them why they're interested. My first question for interns that would come into the newsroom was always, why are you interested? And if they said, I just want to be on TV, I had very, very little time that I wanted to spend with them. But there were some that were honest enough to say that. But for people who truly care about their community, you know, I say and I still believe, if you're in it for the right reasons and you're willing to fight for doing the right things, there's nothing more valuable to a newsroom than a person like that. But if you are, take the time to learn your city council people. Take the time to learn how your government works. Take the time to really figure out what you can do. And again, I hate to sound like a Pollyanna, but I really do think in the local news business especially, it's our job to make the community better. I mean, we're a community service. Find the ways in which you can make your community better, okay? And that doesn't mean it's always going to be a good news story. You may be exposing corruption someplace, but expect, I mean, if you're getting into this because you either love the whole craft of writing and journalism, or you really love the idea of being a crusader for the truth, that's great. I will encourage those people all day long, but they will have to know that they're going to come in and be buffeted by the winds of everything else. And I'm very honest about that. You know, I'll tell you, when I trying to remember when it was not more than a week or two after the election took place. And I was invited to speak at a local Rotary Club about the foundation. And I walked in and I sat down, and I'm up on the panel, on the dais, or whatever you call that whole area where people are sitting. And the gentleman who was running the meeting got up, and the very first thing he did was launch into a 10-minute tirade of how much he hated the media and how awful it was or what a huge win this whole election was for putting the media in its place, and how nothing could be trusted. And I sat there listening to all this, and you've never heard a greater critic of the media than me, okay, when all this transition, I mean, I have criticized very much the way things have taken place. But I found myself the more I sat there, I could just feel the whole blood draining out of my face. And I looked across to the girl who had booked me for the meeting, and I nodded my head at her, and she shook her head at me like, no, don't do it. And I got up and I said, I'm going to talk about the Donna Foundation today. But before I do, I have to put in a word for journalism. And I said, for all the faults that it has, and there are many, I'm not going to pretend it's perfect, but I will tell you the enormous majority of people out there who are in journalism are trying their very best to get to the truth of an issue and trying their very best to be fair. And if you want to know what a chaotic society looks like, or what a society that is not free looks like, take away journalism. I said, you will not know what an awful world we live in until you take away free journalism.
Wow,
and
good for you.
Man, I was ticked. and the glares that came to me from the room, I got a few attaboys, but mostly people were not in my camp on that. Mm-hmm. And it does frighten me that we have apparently an enormous group of people out there that believe everything they hear now is fake. It's if you allow yourself to be drawn down that road, it really is a frightening thing. But again, I'm going to choose to think that perhaps all the good reporting that comes out is going to draw people eventually to to a positive place. But it does scare me, Harry. I'm going to be honest. I mean, I never thought, look, as a journalist, you always have your share of people throwing rocks at you. There's no question. But to have so many people, an entire, at least half of the country, who thinks everything you say is made up, it's an enormous insult to the people who give their lives over to this profession. And it is really, at the end of the day, a very noble profession for the people who are trying to do it right. And I think most people really are trying to do it right.
Well, you've got 2 children. Either of them going into journalism or broadcasting?
Actually, yes. My daughter ran as far away from that as she possibly could. She's going into occupational therapy. She's now in graduate school for occupational therapy. God love her. Yeah, so my son wants to go into sports broadcasting. Already over at FSU, he's in his senior year at FSU. He has a morning radio show called Wake Up War Chant that he does with another young man, and he gets to talk sports all morning long before his classes. So he's in heaven, and he can't wait for the day. He said, the only thing is, Mom, I wish the most popular time slot wasn't the morning drive. Because I really hate the idea of getting up this early every day. And I said, well, you know what? I like it because you can't go out and party all day long. You have to get up. But no, so I have one that is interested in broadcasting, and I think he will stick to that, either in radio or in TV or both. But he's adorable, so I expect he'll find his way onto television at some point. He's a really, really knowledgeable kid about sports, so he'll do well.
And you mentioned your husband, Tim, who is in TV, we all know, and
Yes.
Also a runner, right?
Yes, big runner.
Tim Deegan.
Runner, swimmer. He's triathlete. But it's funny because when Tim first started, I think he was the kid. I'm looking over my shoulder at a picture of George, and Tim was the kid. And that's been 35 years now that he's been on the air at Channel 12. He started when he was 22 years old, and now he's not 22 years old. But it's been fun. He still is like a kid when it comes to the weather. I mean, he is literally like a kid. I don't let him drive the car because he will stare at the clouds and run off the road. I mean, seriously, the guy is a weather freak, and still loves every bit of what he does. So I think he still is living out his dream from the time he was 6 years old. He wanted to do that. But yeah, he runs with me. Once a week we run together. He's much faster than I am. So on most days he runs by himself and I run by myself. But on Sundays we run together. And we call that our amnesty run. That's our one time a week when we air all the dirty laundry of the week, and so you can always tell when there's some topic that comes up that gets the blood boiling because we'll run a little faster.
Sometimes those runs are longer than others.
Yeah, or if we're out on one of those runs and I really don't have anything to say and I'm tired, I'll just ask him a weather question and then he'll go for the whole time that we're out there. It'll last forever. But no, it's a great thing that we have in common that we really love to do together. And then the only other time of the year that he runs with me is during the marathon, and he'll run that race with me as well to the finish line.
The Donna Foundation continues. The marathon is going to go on forever.
Oh gosh, I hope not forever. I mean, well, actually, I hope it does go on forever. I just hope that we cure breast cancer, and so then we can just run for fun every year. That would be good.
Or find a new cause.
Or find a new cause. I'm open to that.
Yeah. But what needs to be done? More funding of research and so forth in cancer, or?
I do think that, yes. I loved the idea of the whole moonshot with cancer. I think it's like any other really difficult problem. I think it requires money to do the research to get it done. And unfortunately, there really is a dearth of money when it comes to cancer research. Most of the money that's in research it comes from private citizens or people that are raising money, and really it's one of those things that and I'll go ahead and say it for whatever political football it may be. I believe everybody in this country, as wealthy a country as we have, should have health care. I believe that's a fundamental right that everybody should have. And I think that, and I'll take it back to cancer research. I think the smartest minds understand that if you don't have a healthy population, all the rest of it just goes up from there, right? And I really do believe that. And that's why I think cancer research is so important. If we don't get a handle on this once and for all at some point, I just think that it continues to drag our society down in so many ways. It drags on us financially in many ways, in addition to just the health and well-being of our population, which then affects our economy, which then affects everything else. So I would love to see more money spent in research. We absolutely need that. As far as what we fund with the foundation, we fund a very tiny hole of breast cancer research that they do at Mayo Clinic, but a significant one, which is focused on unraveling the genes that cause breast cancer. And since we started this 10 years ago, they've been able to type every mutation of a breast cancer gene. They've been able to come up with new treatments we didn't have before. They found genes and hybrid genes they didn't even know existed. And they've developed a brand new vaccine for triple negative breast cancer, which is the type of breast cancer that I had, that we didn't even have a treatment for before besides chemotherapy. There are all sorts of targeted treatments now, but not for that type. And it's the deadliest type of cancer that we have, and it attacks young women. And so these things are, I'm very proud of them and vitally important, but it's a drop in the bucket of the money that we really need for research for cancer. And I would love to see, I think the money's out there, I just think we have to prioritize it in the right ways. And I would love to see more money go toward what I think overall will make the greatest impact on the health and welfare of our people. And that's where I think could be a great place to put it. So yeah, I do.
Anything else about broadcasting or the foundation, or anything that you would like to add?
It's been one of the greatest joys of my life to be able to connect with women. Women are amazing people. They really are. Men are too. Men are great, but I'm just going to say, when you get women together for a cause, I met with a group of women this morning. I was doing a story on, we have a big brick campaign that's going on. Jacksonville Beach gave us this whole oceanfront park to start a brick campaign for a permanent legacy for the foundation, so people can buy bricks and remember people. And so I met with this group that of various different breast cancer survivors, never knew each other. They just saw what we were doing and they said, we want to get together and we want to make a difference. But what was so cool was to see all the, we didn't know these people existed until they came and presented us with a big, huge check at last year's race. And where did you guys come from? Well, we just wanted to make our own impact. And that's what women tend to do. You know, women, as one of the ladies put it today, women, for all the criticism they can pile on other women, when crises happen, women rally. They really do rally. And it's been really inspiring to see what women do when they get together and they try to lift everybody else up. And one of the things I've learned, you know, I will say that my dad was a pretty conservative dude. He was a conservative guy, so I grew up in a very conservative household. And I'll say no more about that. But as I have done work with this foundation, and I have seen the women that we have worked with, it has completely, and it's all been just a big, huge transition. It has completely changed my view of people that need help. Let's put it that way. I have yet to see one woman, that we have helped through the foundation, and there's been more than 10,000 now. I have yet to see one that didn't come to us as an absolute last resort after she had tried to keep every single ball in the air that she could possibly keep. And I will tell you, the huge majority of women want to come back and help once they get back on their feet. And that to me speaks volumes. And I wish that in this country people could put on my glasses on things like that. I know we have abuses of the system. There's no question that we do. But I truly believe the huge majority of people just, as my friend Jim King used to say, sometimes government is the only anchor to windward that you'll ever have. And I miss him, by the way. I miss Republicans like him. But I wish people could have the eyes that I have for people like that, because I think the huge majority of people really don't want a handout. I think they really just want to get on their feet and help other people. And I would love to see all of us be a bigger part of that. But the foundation has been, in that way, one of the greatest joys of my life, to be able to see the hearts of people that perhaps I didn't see so well before, when it was more about me than it was about them. And so I'm really happy about that.
Donna Deegan, thank you very much.
Thank you. See, Harry, you all you had to do was turn me on, and that was all. I mean, I could talk forever. You know me, I could talk forever.